Hello and welcome to the Brawl Hub's special episode in which we are ranking the color combinations of for the best meta. I am Grimside,
And I'm Hazor.
and tonight as we said, are gonna have a wonderful setup to let you know which decks you should probably focus on in which colors.
Yep. So we are going to be ranking all of the colors combinations, as you see here, from S to Don't Bother, with S being colors that have multiple playable decks competitively, along with good card quality, and stuff like D and Don't Bother being pretty much no playable decks, and the cards in those colors are just bad. Um, yeah. So would you like to start us off, Grimstone?
All right, I think this one is pretty much easy. We're gonna start with colorless, and that's clearly just don't bother.
Yep.
It's nothing against colorless commander decks. There's a lot of cool, interesting cards you could have as a commander. The main problem is that in general, mana rocks are very uh, low right now. In general, like the fact that you don't have Soul Ring and the most you got is Ugin's Labyrinth can really make a huge difference overall in deck building.
Yeah, you just get none of the things all the other colors have, so it's just not good. You aren't getting anything out of playing colorless that you wouldn't get out of playing literally any other color. So,
Even with the
yeah,
Even with the devoid cards in general, they have made it so that you could have a five color commander type situation that's technically counts as colorless. So even wizards kinda agree that you might as well just go with the Wooburgs.
yep, for sure. Next on our list we
All
have
right, and now
mono white. Um, I think this is in the middle somewhere, probably around B for me. I don't know, would you agree with that?
I think B is reasonable. In general, it's like there's a lot of fun options of variety in mono white. You got Rosie, you got Adeline, but in general, if we're going with competitive wise, mono white is just always the weaker of the two. Why just play mono white when you can also add blue white to make a card draw, or red white to just get more aggro?
Yeah, that is all true. That being said, though, white does have some pretty good cards in the format, things like Swords to Plowshares, and it has pretty much all the good aggro protection bodies, which is why it's up here, is that there are many white commanders that you can put an aggro deck into, and they'll just be very good. Adeline being the best one of all of them, but it has pretty good card quality, multiple playable commanders, which is why it's up here. You'll find viable decks in this color.
Indeed. Moving on, we're going with blue, and I kind of think that blue's kind of below white. Would you agree there?
Yeah, for sure. The thing blue really lacks is that unlike red, white, or black, you don't have any early game removal. So while blue's counterspells and things are really strong, playing mono blue is kind of shooting yourself in the foot because if someone's playing any kind of Ragavan or good one drop on you, you just kind of lose because you just can't interact with it. And
I
that's really
also
blue's weakness.
I also think that in general that there's not a lot of variety for blue in comparison to the other colors.
Mhm.
When you look at the top commander choices for blue, it's usually just Emery or one kind of counter all day thing like Baral or Malcolm.
Yeah.
Things that are just kind of too slow to just and only have an answer one at a time. So if your opponent has multiple things played out all at once, it could just end you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, blue is it's really just too slow to get going by itself, which is why you really just need another color to put with it.
Mhm.
Alright, next we have mono black. I actually think this as a color is stronger than mono white. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Oh, absolutely, actually. Look, I've lost to a lot of mono black decks in general. I lost to Davriel, I lost to Yawgmoth, I lost to Shealdred. It's just a color that has a lot of great removal, hand hate, and in general just allows you to have enough versatility to play it in any other ways you want. From aggro to control to even a combo deck.
Yep, things like Yawgmoth or Davriel really show like the polar opposites of mono black. You have the aggro bodies, but you also have the removal and board wipes to play control. In addition to being the only color that is hand hate, the card quality in mono black really boosts the commanders that are playable in that color, and that's why it's in our A tier.
All right, and now we're on after black. It has to be red, and in my opinion, red is around the same color as white.
Agreed. It does the same thing.
It's pretty much it's uh white might have more removal, but red just has more enough aggressive things in general. And let's face it, Ragavan is a card.
Yeah. Red's biggest issue is that Ragavan and maybe like one or two others are pretty much the only viable mono red commanders because while it can be faster than mono white, it also lacks the resilience that mono white has. I do personally like the cheap removal in red more than in white, but they're about even on this tier.
Exactly. I think in general you're gonna probably easily splash red into anything and it gives you good results. But by itself, you might as well just try something different.
Yeah.
Right, and with the final color, we got the green.
Yep.
And would you like to do the honor?
Yeah, it's somewhere in the bottom too. I'll probably put it in C tier because it does have a playable commander, and that is Azusa. Azusa's very strong, except not into new commander Nadu, which will just destroy Azusa decks. But green is
Oh, we'll
strong.
talk about Nadu later.
Yeah, we will. Green is very strong in that it has cheap ramp that you can get to your bodies effectively, but the only problem with green is that it has absolutely zero good removal. And that just makes it bad because you can't interact with anything your opponent is doing.
I think that green in general, it feels like, ironically, the gambling deck, which you would think red would be. Because in general, you're just hoping your opponent either doesn't have the right removal to knock out your big stuff, or just allows you to just go off and go crazy.
Yeah,
Like Pock is a great example of this, where Pock, the best way to play Pock is when you still have a land to play, because you know that your opponent's going to be using removal on it. So by doing it like this, you essentially save yourself for a turn.
yep,
But honestly, it's like green has a lot of great payoffs, just not a lot of good protection.
yep. Moving
Righty.
on, we have Azorius. I personally think this is one of the best color combinations in the format.
Look, you know me and my dislike of Teferi sometimes. I think it's a strong commander. And but even if I were to exclude Teferi's type in the meta, you still got things like Saint type,
Saint Traft.
uh, Saint Trap, thank you, and Pippin, just in general. It's surprisingly even more, you can have even more aggressive decks in blue-white than even in just mono-red, which is the real surprising part.
Yeah, you can play Tempo, and you also have the 10 variations of Teferi control you can play, and all of those decks are competitive viable pretty much, which is why it's up here. It has strong card quality between all the blue removal, counter spells and draw with the whiteboard wipes and things, and the aggressive bodies that put it in S tier along with all of the playable commanders, which is why it's just such a strong color pair to play with.
Speaking of strong colors, we are now on Demir, which personally I think will be around an A tier.
Okay, I think I would concur with that. What
I could
commanders are you
argue,
thinking of?
I think, well, in general, I think about like things like Kaido, which I always lose to in the league, and I usually play a lot of aggressive decks. So in general, it's basically the best of the control, the best of the counters, and the best of the removal. Then there's also things like Rusko, who we had banned for a while because we thought the power level of it was just strong enough. Nowadays, a lot of people might think Rusko is actually pretty easy to beat, but back in the day, when there wasn't as much variety in the brawl, it was really a powerhouse to face.
I don't know. I think Ruska is still really good. Honestly, I can see just in terms of card quality, this actually being up there with Azorius, maybe.
Personally, I say it as a person who plays a lot of Boros decks.
Hmm,
Rusko really dies to the fast aggressiveness if they can't keep the commander around to give them life.
I can see that. Where do you think Demir is best suited, with Mono Black or with Azorius?
Personally, I think it's better with mono black,
Okay.
just only slightly though.
Hmm. It's somewhere in between. It's like top of A.
Exactly.
That's not letting me order. There we go.
Top of A is a good choice.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Do you want to do the honors?
All right, we got the good old Rakdos, which might surprise people, but I believe is around B tier.
I would agree with that.
A lot of people will be going on about League with Crucius in general, and there's also things like Croxus and Judith. But in general, I do think that Rakdos kind of suffers in the idea that it's really usually relies on its commanders to really make impact.
Yeah, black and red are both pretty solid aggressive colors combined together, but the main problem with this color pair is just the lack of viable commanders. You have Crucius, you have maybe Judith, and then after that, you just got nothing,
It
and that's why it's
it
down
gets
here.
into the it gets into the fringe of using Croxus and stuff like that,
Yeah,
which just dies to just rest in peace.
it gets very fringe after the first couple of commanders, which is why it's down here. It has good cards certainly, but it doesn't have enough support for them.
Yep. All right. Now we're going on to Gruel.
Yes. Personally, I think Gruel is probably around C tier. Um,
Personally, I would actually have it a bit lower, around D tier.
really, I'll put it bottom C for now.
Yeah.
Why would you say D?
Well, in general, I do think that while there's a lot of fun commanders in general, you got like the one artifact matter things, you got Ruby, you got Minsk. A lot of the problems is just jankier mono red or jankier mono green. Like the biggest versatility it has was with Itali. And even then, a lot of people nowadays can just smash through Italis before they even get their first play.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think of these, we haven't actually seen any Minsk and Boo players in the league yet, and that might bring it up to bottom of C-ish as a viable deck. Besides Minsk, we have Domri, Anarch of Volos, and Atali as maybe commanders, but yeah, I was going to say, saying the real problem with red and green is that green being bad by itself and red only having cheap removal, they don't synergize at all, because green wants to go big and red wants to go small. And so a lot of Gruul
Yeah.
decks you'll see being pretty much mono red with green or mono green with red. And it just doesn't really work together.
Indeed, indeed. Moving on, we've got the old good old Selesnya.
Where would you like
And
this?
Selesnya is one of my favorite colors. I love its playstyle, everything about it. It's D tier.
Damn. But I do agree. I do agree. Selesnya just doesn't have much going for it. You have things like Yasharn and Catilda, and it kind of runs into the green problem of your green color isn't really doing anything to back up the white. Your colors just aren't meshing together. You're running either mono white aggro with some green or some green lands deck with some white in it, and it's just basically the
in,
same thing that Gruul's doing, except
in
worse.
my opinion, in my opinion, one of the best Selesnya Selesnya style decks is Amara. And even then, it's like in general, why wouldn't I just play a different color? Because Amara is at most a 2/3 that gets you a card in your hand for 3 mana
Oh, we're talking about
that
the
you can
Convoke one.
convoke.
Yes.
Yeah, convoke. Uh, and you know what's really sad when the best card you got is the alchemy exclusive card.
Yeah.
Uh, which is a shame because I really love building Selesnya, but every time I go, well, there's just too much ramp or there's too much creatures. It's got a mix of both, but it's now worse.
hmm Yeah. Uh, Pretty much.
Uh,
The reason I put it lower than Gruul actually is that I think it has less viable commanders than Gruul does in a competitive setting.
yep.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
Like at most I can think of is Sithis.
Oh, that's true actually. I kind of forgot Sithis was a thing. Yeah, no, Sithis by far the most playable Selesnya commander. Sithis alone is probably up in the top tiers,
It
but the rest of Selesnya is just not good.
it's pretty sad because Sithis is like easily a top tier commander, but in general, the main problem is that every other commander is just that bad.
Yeah.
I don't want to butcher this anymore. Let's move on.
Fair enough. We got Orzhov next. I personally I think I put this either in like bottom B or top of C. Probably leaning towards C actually right now.
Yeah, I
Uh,
could see that.
yeah. You for Orzhov, you have Orzhov control decks. Yeah, you really only have Orzhov control decks. I think the best example of that is the new Alchemy Teysa. I think it's Teysa.
Oh
That
yeah, the
likes to
spirit one.
stall. Yeah, and make all the spirit tokens. That can actually be a pretty fast clock. But
Uh, I
yeah,
have been experimenting with the new Sorin in general, and while I do think the new Sorin's pretty good and strong, it just feels in general that this is like the opposite of Selesnya, where the instead of the 99 having great potential, I mean being great, bad, but the commander's being all right. It's where the commander's all right, but the 99's kind of hit or miss depending on what you're playing.
yeah. I mean,
Because
white and black actually have some good synergy on like the colors in D tier, where they both like removal.
tokens matters is almost a staple of Orzhov.
Yeah,
You got Bitter Blossom, Lingering Souls, stuff like that have always been a key sign of a good token style.
yeah. The main thing with Orzhov really is that they're slower decks and they don't play blue. And slower deck and blue doesn't really, and no blue doesn't really work out usually.
Unfortunately.
All right,
M-
next we have
Moving on,
my
we got
favorite.
Is It?
Yep, my favorite. I am biased to put this in A tier. I don't know about you.
It's either low A but or top B for me.
That's fair. Uh,
I
what did you want to say about it?
Well, in general, I think of there's some good is it stuff and value wise, control, versatility, all that. The main problem is that the commander wise, you're really lacking. You either go with a Ral or you go with the Niv Mizzet, which is both essentially the same deck, different commander in most many cases.
Yeah, the reason I have it up here is it's one of those that has amazing card quality, in my opinion, and the commanders just aren't quite there. You have Rawl from War of the Spark and Rawl from Guilds of Ravnica. Those are both pretty solid. Niv Mizzet, I think, hasn't put up results, but that one's pretty good too. Um, and the blue and the red actually synergize pretty well because the red has all the cheap removal for the early game, and the blue lets you play the late game. So that's why I like
Not
this
to,
color pair in A. It has viable commanders, and I
not to
think
mention, face let's face it, is it is the best colors for extra turn decks.
certainly I love my extra turns. Yeah, so that's why it's up there.
I know you've used them so many times on me.
Very true. All right.
All right, moving on. We got Golgari, and again, this is D tier. I'd say even lower than Selesnya.
Yeah, I can see that. Uh, Golgari's big issue, kind of like is that its commanders are just terrible. You have old stick fingers, maybe, and those decks aren't even that great anymore, and that's pretty much it. Golgari colors actually do synergize better than Selesnya and Gruul usually, but you just aren't rewarded for playing them at all.
Uh, I I play a lot of Golgari decks before because I like the Golgari commanders. I've tried Stick Fingers, I tried the Azonis, I tried that one Death Touch guy. Every time I play those decks, heck, I even played Chatterfang at one point. Every time I play them, it feels like they always overly rely on the commander, and the commander itself is just lackluster.
Yeah, I can definitely see that being the case. All right, I think this is your favorite, so why don't you do the honors?
All right, we got Boros at S tier. This isn't even a debate, honestly.
Yep.
I've re- it might be biased because of the Tajik and a Johnny in general, and people might be going, "Oh, the versatilities for those colors isn't much there." But the impact those two those two commanders had alone just makes the format changed entirely.
Yeah, the thing about Boros is that first it got very good commanders recently, and already had some between both Tajiks. You got Ajani now, and possibly others I don't think of. And then
I
that
mean,
combines the resilient aggro of white and the fast aggro of red, Anim Pakel, as you just said, yes. Uh, it combines both the best parts of aggro into one deck, and with fetch lands, the man base doesn't matter that much anymore, which is why it's up here in S tier.
Honestly, if it's an example in which I can run like 34 lands when the average is around 38 and still go 3-0 with a deck, you know that it's making impact.
Yeah,
Speaking of making impact, Simic.
also S tier. And this isn't just because of Nadu, actually. There are other viable Simic commanders. There's Uro, there's Kinnan, there's... I don't know, I think people have tried the 3-mana Kiora too. Simic
Yep.
actually is a thing, even though blue and green by themselves are both in C tier. The thing with Simic is that you can rely on you not having early game interaction by playing early game green drops that help you accelerate to your late game big green and blue spells, and then the blue can help you in the late game where the green would stall out normally.
It's really a surprise is surprising where two colors that are seemingly bad on their own just sync so well together. Because even as you were saying, there was the whole commanders with that, but also the payoffs in Simic is usually pretty good too. You got like Coma, who can basically just shut down games by itself. You got in as you ramp type situation, you get into Pox, you get into the last March of the Ends, and of course, even, we do have to say Nadu is in general an example of it.
Yep,
You mentioned the two best ramp spells in my opinion, Growth Spiral and the new one from Modern Horizons 3, are both Simic color specified.
yep,
Overall, I think we got a good cut. We're gonna definitely see more Simic played, especially in the tournaments.
for sure. And now we move on to the 3 through 5 color, and these are really decided by if they have good commanders, because a lot of these don't. Um,
hmm
and we start with Esper. Esper does have Rafine, which is why I'm inclined to probably throw it in B tier, because it has Rafine, and then it pretty much has nothing else.
Yeah, yeah. But it's an example. This is an example of back when we did that early bannings of hitting things. Hitting Raffine just literally butchered the playstyle of those decks.
Yeah,
Because in general, the Esper it has it also had Quezca, but that is a really janky thing, so
yeah,
you wouldn't be playing it. And at the same time, why would you play Esper when you could play either an Azorius commander or a Demir commander that does better?
yeah. Yeah, that's really the thing. They individually, all these colors pack really good removal, which is good for control or tempo decks, but there just isn't the commanders to back it up, which we'll see for most of these.
Moving on, we got Grixis. And personally, I do think it actually can be around bottom A tier.
I think I agree. The Grixis colors work really well together to play a good mid-range control deck. Frequently Nicol Bolas. I think the new Marchesa too is a good example.
There's Saruman, who does sometimes see a play. Even though he feels like he should be janky, he does at least sometimes have enough control and impact that
Yeah,
you really need to answer it the moment it enters the board.
yeah, I agree. I think that's the big strength of Grixis is that it has all the removal and it combines it with those threats to back it up that your opponent still has to deal with anyway.
hmm
And next we have Jund. Um, Jund is probably like B or C tier.
I think it's bottom C if you were going to be honest.
Yeah, Jund really has Slimefoot and Squee as a really strong deck, and maybe Corvold, but besides that, it doesn't have much going for it.
There's Lord Windgrace, which is already feels like a fringe deck because land destruction decks in general are usually too slow, ironically enough, because the and many of the aggro decks only need 2 to 3 lands themselves to really do any impact, whereas that needs at least 3 lands to really make its moves go off.
Yep,
And then there's also in general that there's a lot of bad options in Judd Colors.
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah.
I used to run an Ognis deck. It was
Yeah,
a haste matters deck. It was terrible.
I wouldn't doubt it. It's definitely hurt by its lack of blue. Blue being on C tier does not mean it's bad. It's one of the better colors, as we can see up in the top here. It's all blue. It has great cards, just on its own, it's not very good. But in a color combination, not having blue is really going to hurt you.
hmm
And next we have
All right.
Naya. I'm inclined to put
Oh
this in
boy.
D.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I play on Naya. I love Naya. There's a lot of versatility in Naya. You can have a lot of fun commanders in Naya. Naya's 99 sucks.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue.
Ironically, adding green to Boros makes it worse than Selesnya.
Yeah, and with Naya you have Jetmir, you have the Alchemy Emperor card, and
You got Mayor, the tokens matter guy.
yeah, you have
You got
various things, and they just do what the lesser colors would do, but slower, and
at a
they're more
slower
prone to
pace.
interaction also.
They're also a classic case of relying too much on their commanders to do anything.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to Bant, I'd probably put this in D tier. I just can't think of anything good with Bant in it.
I can think of a few things in the band, but in general, I do agree D tiers around it.
Yeah, I just don't think Bant has good commanders.
There's that one lifelink commander.
Oh, yeah, the Shauna
At the
tempo
beginning of the
deck.
end step,
Yeah,
you draw X cards, which
yeah,
I have a friend who beats me all the time with that deck.
yeah, it's a good
But in
one.
general, I think that's more of a good control commander than an actual just band.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
do think it at least has better than Naya.
that's fair. Yeah, I just can't think of any good commanders. It just suffers from bad commanders.
There was
Uh,
also that Rusko guy, who, makes things unblockable,
oh,
or draws you a card when you attack with one or
oh,
less power.
Rigo. Not yeah.
Rigo, thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Rusco.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, what?
Hey, you're my favorite bank commander, Rusco, the clock man.
Yeah. Nope, not a bad commander.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yep. Uh, and actually, similarly to Bant, I think Abzan suffers from the commander's thing as well.
I honestly, you might sound shocked for me to say this. I do think of Abzan as don't bother at the moment.
Oh, really? Even worse than all of these.
I say it as this. Right now you got Thalia Gitrog Monster, Necro Bloom. You got a few other commander type situation, all that thing. And the thing is, they're fun, they're interesting, they're diverse. They do nothing.
Yeah,
These decks do nothing. Like Anafenza, the foremost, oh no, Anafenza, the Abzan one,
yeah,
basically is an entire graveyard exile for your opponent thing on one side of the thing. It should sound like an impactful card. It does nothing in this format.
yeah.
Necro is Field of the Dead on a body. You think it would be amazing in this format,
It's
especially with
terrible.
how ramp is. Unplayable.
Yep,
Valiant Gitrog Monster is the most playable of the three, and even then, it is slowed down by the fact that you need the three colors.
yep. Abzan is generally pretty slow, and it doesn't really have any good payoffs to back it up, is the biggest issue.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. Moving on to Jeskai. This one's actually pretty good. Probably B for me.
B or C, honestly.
Yeah, I think I'll put it. I kind of want it in B. Probably worse than the mono colors.
Hmm.
But it has some things. It has Zergo and Ojutai and Narsets. It's a pretty good color for control.
I
In
do
terms of
think
card
that there's a
quality.
lot of good payouts in Jeskai in general, but I just think in its versatility kind of lacks, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't do that much.
Like if there's a you were talking about the Narset, but you're probably talking about the Cons Narset. There's like three Jeskai Narsets,
Yeah,
and
I
only
was
one
thinking
of
of
the
the
three is
Ikoria Narset. That's the best
really the
one.
one that. Oh,
It's
that's
the
true. I
four
guess
mana
the other
one.
one is the
Yeah,
5 mana one is just a combo deck, which those really don't do well in League.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then there's the prowess one, which is
That could be fine. I don't
stop,
know. It's just not that
stop.
good.
Just yeah, I've played, but it's fun. It's fun. It's a real fun deck.
Yeah,
It's not competitive.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm being rude to this color.
I mean, not a lot of these play things have things going for them. Uh, Although
Mm-hmm.
speaking of things that might have things going for them, Sultai, I'd probably put it in B. It's not that bad.
Honestly, I do agree there.
Yeah, it has some stuff. It has the Alchemy Nashi, and I mentioned something when we were
Ladrolfa the
talking.
Gravetide.
Ladrotha
There's
feels a little slow.
What about Yarok the Desecrated?
I mean,
The
someone's been doing well with that.
Panharmonicon on a stick.
Somewhat doubt it, but I don't know. It could be fine. Um,
And then there's also Sadisty.
yeah, it
The
has.
thing is, though, out of those things, a lot of those decks all play differently, you know?
Yeah,
There's a lot of, while it's not exactly like they're gonna be making impact as Jeskai does, it does have more versatility in general, so that you can actually have interesting commanders that play differently, but also can synergize well with each other.
yeah. I was thinking Zamona and Dina. I just remembered. I guess the
Oh
main
yeah,
strength of Sultai is that it plays the late game that Abzan wants to, but does it well and has blue in it. It can grind out and be pretty interactive with the black side too, which
indeed.
is why it's fine. But again, lack of commanders, as pretty much all of these colors are.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, and with Mardu, I think this is worse than Abzan, honestly.
Honestly, I do agree. There's like there's here's the thing. In general, there's a lot of commander potential, but all the potential is lacking because of the 99. It's a bit of the opposite of Abzan.
Yeah,
Whereas Abzan has great commanders, just kind of lacking with the versatilities for the 99. This one has all right commanders and all right main deck stuff. It's just average, I guess, is the
yeah.
word.
It doesn't do enough. You don't want to add another color to your aggro deck, and the commanders are just fine. Like, there's nothing that's going to be better than any of your Boros aggro cards.
The most I would think is Ishin, because he is surprisingly a pretty fun commander. But the main problem is with him is that there's not a lot of good payoffs with him.
Yeah.
I know that because I've tried him in League.
And it didn't work out great.
Oh no, it didn't. 1-2.
Yep.
All
Okay.
right, Teamer.
I put it bottom D.
Yeah, I can see that.
It doesn't
Like
have
that,
commanders.
I think that it's one of those rare cases where if it had an amazing commander, it would definitely go up to A, even S tier. But because it doesn't have any good commanders, like the best one I could think of is Omnath.
Yeah.
And even then, I would just rather play the four color Omnath, if I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. For sure. And yeah, the colors have good cards in them, but there's nothing. I guess Aluna also is pretty. That's actually not bad, but there's just not much
Eh,
going on in here.
Luna's kind of janky as hell. It costs 5 mana to put on a body that you don't want to die, and
Yeah,
if it doesn't die,
that's true.
then you get the effect that is a lottery effect.
Yes. Yeah, I just
I
don't have
don't
that
know.
much. Um, and then
It's
for
still better
these,
than
sorry, keep going.
it's still better than Abzan though. Sadly,
Yeah. For these first three four-color pairs, I want to put them all in. Don't bother. I don't think there's anything you gain by
honestly,
playing these.
it's true. Like, and I don't think we have a
I don't even know if we have either of these. I know we have Brea for this. I don't know if we
we
have
have
these.
Rhea. We do. I don't think we have the other two. Actually,
Okay, so they're just like
I
not
might be
even.
playable.
Yeah, they don't even exist. Just ignore
They are
these.
literally unplayable.
Yep.
But in general, the thing is, Brea is, I think, actually good, could be playable. It's just no one has brewed it yet enough for me to formulate an idea.
Yeah, I just think it's too expensive to be running all four colors for. That's just a lot.
Hmm.
Ugh.
And now we're on to the other two.
Infamous. Well, I don't know. The five colors in here. Let's do the four colors first. Actually, that's not a bad
Yeah.
idea.
Let's
Um.
do the attracts a color four
Okay.
color.
I'm gonna I'll put this in A or B. Like,
Personally, I think A is a perfectly reasonable thing. I think it's in general a lot of thing. We just called it the attracts a color because that's mostly what you're gonna play with. But let's face it, both attractors are impactful.
yep. Yeah, the colors mesh well, having some ramp, but also you basically get to play all the best cards in the format, and then Helm's Waged Commander like the 7 mana Atraxa. The portion of Abzan, of not Abzan, whatever this color combination's name is, that have good commanders is high. So it just has good
Red
card
list.
quality and good commanders, which is why it's up here.
So I usually call it red free or
Red
sans
free.
red.
That works. Yep. Alright, then we
Uh,
have four color Omnath colors. I'd probably put this in C.
C seems reasonable. Like you was mentioned Omnath, but there's also like Aragorn.
Yep, Aragorn's solid too.
It has two solid commanders. The main problem is that they both play a lot differently from each other.
Yep,
So you can't really synergize those two as well as you could with the Atraxa colors.
yep. It just needs a better, like its card quality is slightly worse than Atraxa colors. It really just needs better commanders to be up there. Like the commanders it has are fine, but they're just not great.
Yeah. And now the coup de grace, five
Five
color.
color. The Bogeyman of Brawl, but honestly, I think it's C tier, for competitive at least.
That's low. Honestly, I would put it as high D, low C.
Really. I'm kind of feeling middle C.
Well,
I don't
let's
think
face
it's
it,
worse than at least the two colors we have in D.
that's fair. Middle C then?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Because let's face it, in general, most of the color decks are either the Golos, which is somewhat slow in this format, but it has gotten results. But it's let's face it, it is a very slow thing, and most of its results are from alternate wind conditions like Maze's End.
Mhm.
And then there's also like Kenrith, which is all right, and then you just have a bunch of generic just shenanigan commanders
Yeah,
where they're just giving Wooburg colors to make it work for the format.
yeah. I think the best five color commander might be the War of the Spark Nev Mizzet, but that's just pretty much worse than Atraxa. The biggest problem with five colors is that you're taking all your life in your mana base, and you don't get much to show by playing five colors versus some good four color deck, usually.
Or even just two color decks.
Yeah. Yeah, then that's the biggest issue with these colors too, is that the mana base, you can actually hurt yourself by putting in extra colors in addition to having worse commanders.
There was like a Joda five color Legends Matters, and it was like I found that I was playing Minsk and Boo,
Hmm.
which was a like three color Naya, and I was doing better results,
Yeah,
which really shows how sometimes it's called the greedy color for a reason.
yeah, it's very greedy.
And I believe that we don't have anything new unless they made purple as a color yet.
Not yet. So I think
Ah,
that'll wrap up this video. Thank you for watching. This has been
please
Hazor.
give us your opinions on which ones you think is your personal top favorite colors.
Yep. This has been Hazor and Grimstein. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you.
Peace.
All right.